Hey, I'm Brandon Cassiano, and I'll be presenting a crisis communication strategy for Tornado Cash, a decentralized privacy protocol that recently moved from sanction to redemption. The presentation will explore how public relations can rebuild trust at the intersection of cybersecurity, financial ethics, and government regulations. For context, in 2022, the U.S. Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control, or the OFAC, sanctioned Tornado Cash, alleging that over $7 billion in cryptocurrency flowed through its protocol, containing within it over $455 million tied to the North Korean Lazarus Group and the Axie Infinity hack. Now, from both Europe and US, developers were arrested, and the public opinion was quick to become very negative. However, after some review, the OFAC delisted Tornado Cash in March of this year, and now we have to really re-examine how we assign blame with a very decentralized age. So, what makes this a crisis, right? So, we've got several factors: technological, financial, ethical, and reputational. We're talking about how a huge amount of money moved passed through and pushed the limits of an autonomous code. We're talking about billions of dollars in digital assets for financial. Ethically, we're talking about weighing privacy against criminal liability. And as far as reputation is concerned, we're talking about how media recast Tornado Cash from a privacy innovation to a money laundering machine. So a lot of negativity there. The qualifications here are that government action threatened to the project's very existence. Developer liability blurred the line between building software and committing a crime. Headlines polarized the public, and the trust evaporated across the blockchain community. Now, moving into what Tornado Cash actually was meant to be, it was launched in 2019 as an open source mixture for Ethereum. Excuse me, sorry. It allows users to protect their financial privacy by breaking the one chain link between sender and receiver. The protocol runs autonomously through smart contracts and DAO governance. The mission was to preserve lawful financial privacy through decentralized open source technology. Their values and success factors include privacy, transparency, decentralization, ethical innovation, and due process. Success for them now depends on three things, which is educating the public about legitimate uses, engaging with policymakers, and establishing a consistent ethical voice for the company. Now, the media narratives when this happened, the mainstream media framed the story as a crime crackdown, focusing on North Korean hackers and terror financing. In contrast, you've got the crypto media, which described it as a dangerous precedent, the criminalization of software itself. So on social media, the hashtag code is speech went viral, reflecting a community that was pretty much split down the middle here. Now, response comparisons. We've got government versus advocates. And we've got, as far as government, they spoke first and they were very loud. They used national security frame that dominated the news cycle. Advocates responded with counter narratives about civil liberties and open source ethics. Now, by the time balanced coverage even emerged, the damage was just done. It was pretty much over for these guys. Now, ethical representation, you've got multiple groups here: developers, public, users, and regulators. Developers were demonized as accomplices, while the legitimate users were rarely acknowledged. Regulators were hailed as protectors or criticized as overreaching bureaucrats, depending on the audience. So, our job now is to rehumanize all sides and bring clarity to a very complex conversation. That'll be fun. Diving deeper into this, Tornado Cash could have prevented the narrative vacuum with a proactive PR strategy, which is why we are here. They could have issued educational content about lawful use, maintaining a spokesperson, and publishing transparency reports before sanctions ever even hit. So the lesson here is that if you don't tell your story, somebody else will, and they do not promise providing you the best light if they do that. So, for our peer toolkit, we'll have 8 tactical tools: the press briefing, the press release, social media plan, media outreach list, wired distribution, newsroom assets, measurement plan, and a clear purpose, which is, of course, rebuilding trust through lawful privacy education. For the briefing and release, at the briefing, we will acknowledge the concerns, clarify the protocol's autonomy, condemn any illicit use, and commit to working with policymakers. The headline we'll push will be Tornado Cash launches ethical privacy program after OFAC delisting. The tone will always be, focusing on transparency and forward thinking to shift us from the idea of being defensive to constructive. For social media, we'll focus on several platforms like X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub, Medium, and Reddit for the controlled conversations. We'll also implement weekly explainer threads and bi weekly updates to keep followers informed without overexposure. And we'll even develop hashtags and monitor them, like ethical privacy and code and contact, to help signal our new identity around education as opposed to argument. For outreach, we will reach out to journalists who understand both policy and technology, like Andy Greenberg at Wired. Writers from The Verge and TechCrunch will also be looked at, and industry voices like Decrypt and Unchained will also be sought out as well. The distribution will run through Business Wire for mainstream coverage, and we want Chainwire for crypto channels. As far as the measurement plan, we're going to be following the Barcelona principles here, which means we will measure all outcomes and not just the outputs. Our KPIs track tone shift, engagement rates, and policy mentions. Tools like Meltwater and Brandwatch will be used to assess sentiment change over time. And success for us means clarity and trust, not just the number of clicks. We want people to really, really trust us here. So, crisis phases, how we're going to make this work. So, in the pre crisis phase, Tornado Cash missed warning signs and failed to engage regulators. It was an honest miss. We didn't see it. That's why this happened. During the crisis, we'll provide immediate acknowledgement and then spend weeks pushing media about education and transparency reports. In the post crisis phase, we'll maintain trust through standards and more academic partnerships. Utilizing the Coombs 5 communication types, where we have instructional, adjustment, reputation, emotional, and corrective, we'll apply all 5 types. Instructing information explains user rights, adjusting information shows empathy, reputation management involves third party endorsements, emotional support addresses developer concerns, and corrective action launches our ethical privacy framework. Now, moving into government media, the Treasury press releases used phrases like North Korea, terror finance, and nuclear weapons to really frame the issue as a national security threat. So, that language was strategically powerful, and that's how the first news cycle was won. Our counter is factual, empathetic, and focused on lawful innovation. That is all. For the ethical reflection, should developers be liable for how their tools were used? Courts say maybe when conduct crosses into operation or negligence, but ethically, PR professionals must balance client advocacy with public truth. Transparency beats the spin, education beats the defense. So, in closing, Edwards, we are going to focus on an idea that Edward Snowden once said, which is that privacy is not about having something to hide, it's about having something to protect. Tornado Cash's journey proves that privacy and accountability must coexist. Our strategy then is to turn controversy into a conversation to lead on ethical privacy in Web3 and rebuild trust through transparency. And I've got 2 pages of references here. Thank you so much.